Picture this. You're in a relationship and it feels like lightning. The spark is totally blinding, the energy is electric, and the pull you feel toward this person is just absolutely magnetic. But just like real lightning, it eventually strikes you down, right? Leaving you burned out, exhausted, and basically sitting in the dark, waiting for that next flash. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're launching a deep dive investigation into the hidden neurobiology of our most turbulent relationships. We're going to decode the exact mechanics behind the most painful, highly addictive romance pattern in the modern dating world.
It's kind of the ultimate paradox of modern dating, isn't it? Like, why is it that the relationships that bring us the most pain, the most crippling anxiety, and just the most unpredictability are often the exact same ones we describe as having this intense chemistry? Why do our brains seem to deliberately confuse utter chaos with profound romantic love? I want you to hold onto that question, because the answer is going to fundamentally change how you look at literally every relationship you've ever had. Okay, here's your first major plot twist. That intense, undeniable spark that's keeping you hooked, it's often just a biological illusion. Research from experts like psychiatrist Dr. Amir Levine shows us that what you're feeling isn't necessarily true compatibility at all. Actually, it's your attachment system hyperactivating. See, your brain is being flooded with this crazy cocktail of stress hormones. Think cortisol, adrenaline, that entirely mimic the physiological rush of a deep connection. You are quite literally getting addicted to the relief of a threat passing, rather than the safety of a genuine bond. Chapter 1. The Chemistry of Chaos. Okay, let's dive into this. We absolutely have to stop viewing this chaotic dynamic as fate or destiny or just bad luck. It's actually a highly predictable psychological mystery known as the anxious-avoidant trap, and it's pretty much the most common dysfunctional pairing in our modern app-era dating world. At its core, it's just a chronic pursue-withdraw cycle. One partner moves toward connection when they're stressed, while the other naturally moves away. Dr. Sue Johnson, who founded emotionally focused therapy, identified this as a self-reinforcing loop. Look, neither person is actively trying to cause harm here, but each person's deeply wired coping strategy flawlessly and tragically activates and escalates the other person's deepest insecurities.
Chapter 2. Your Brain on Attachment. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this all starts. To really understand how we get caught in this trap, we have to look back and uncover how early childhood programming secretly controls our adult love lives. This is based on some foundational research by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, which was refined later by Hazan and Shaver. Basically, adult attachment falls onto a grid built on two axes: how you view yourself and how you view others. First up, the secure style. They have a positive view of self and others, so they handle closeness and independence with ease. Then we have the anxious preoccupied style. They have a negative view of themselves but a positive view of others. They fear abandonment and are constantly seeking reassurance. Opposite them is the dismissive avoidant style. Positive view of self, negative view of others. They prioritize independence and tend to push away intimacy. And finally, tucked in the corner, we have the fearful-avoidant style, which really struggles with negative views of both themselves and others.
So why do the anxious and the dismissive avoidant types end up pairing up at rates way higher than statistical chance? Well, here is the chilling reality. Your nervous system is naturally drawn to what is familiar. Why? Because to the primitive brain, familiar equals safe, even when familiar is incredibly painful. Anxious people often grew up with inconsistent caregivers, right? And avoidant people often grew up with emotionally unavailable ones. Subconsciously, these opposite styles are drawn together like magnets, essentially recreating the original flawed family systems they grew up with. Each partner just ends up continually confirming the other's biased view of how love is supposed to work.
Chapter 3. The Pursue-Withdraw Cycle.
Now, what's really interesting about this is seeing what happens when these two inevitably collide. When an anxious pursuer and an avoidant distancer get together, each partner perfectly triggers the other's absolute worst nightmare. Think about it. The anxious partner's core fear is abandonment. So when tension rises, they read any distance or silence as an impending rejection. What do? They reach out. They text more. They demand to talk. But the avoidant partner's core fear is engulfment. They experience this exact same pursuit as suffocation, a literal threat to their autonomy. So to protect themselves, they pull away and go silent. It is a brutal irony. The anxious partner's desperate attempt to feel safe is the exact thing that makes the avoidant partner feel threatened. If you're listening to this and wondering, wait, am I in this trap right now? Here are 7 really clear signs to look out for. First, you have a rigid rhythm. One of you always pursues, the other always distances. Second, every single conflict hits on those core fears of abandonment and engulfment we just talked about. Third, silence is always read as rejection. And fourth, pursuit is always felt as suffocation. Fifth, both of you end up feeling chronically misunderstood. The anxious partner feels unloved, while the avoidant partner just feels overly criticized. Sixth, the fights loop forever without any real resolution. And the seventh, probably the most heartbreaking sign, you're miserable when you are apart, but you are highly anxious when you are together. There's just no equilibrium.
Chapter 4, Narcissism or Just Avoidant. Right about here in the cycle, a frustrated partner usually hits a pretty crucial psychological crossroads. They start asking, is this distant, cold person actually just a malicious narcissist? Well, prepare for a massive plot twist. While both types can really struggle with intimacy and might seem super self-centered on the outside, their motives are entirely different. A narcissist typically uses a very distinct love-bombing phase to hook you, and then they use distance as a weapon. They use it to punish, manipulate, and control you. An avoidant partner does not do this. An avoidant partner uses distance solely to protect and regulate themselves. To an avoidant, true intimacy registers as a literal threat to their nervous system. So they aren't withdrawing to punish you, they're withdrawing because they are completely overwhelmed.
So, we know the anxious pursues and the avoidant distances. These are rigid, sure, but they are predictable strategies. But this raises a much darker question. What happens when a person's nervous system is so overloaded by early trauma that they have no coherent attachment strategy at all? I mean, what does that even look like?
Chapter 5, The Darker Side, Disorganized Attachment.
Okay, we are now leaving the predictable pursue-withdraw cycle and entering some pretty volatile extremes, where early trauma has completely shattered a person's ability to cope. Grounding this in concrete academic evidence, like research from the International Journal of Interdisciplinary Approaches in Psychology, we can see how extreme emotional dependence and high attachment anxiety make young adults incredibly susceptible to truly toxic relationships. We aren't just talking about a frustrating communication loop anymore. We're talking about a total loss of emotional regulation, and that opens the door to manipulation, emotional abuse, and extreme relational instability. This kind of extreme vulnerability is very often rooted in what's called disorganized attachment. Discovered by researchers Mary Main and Judith Solomon, this happens when a child's caregiver is simultaneously the source of their survival and the source of their terror. Imagine that for a second. The nervous system completely short circuits. There's just no coherent strategy to get needs met. So as an adult, this translates into a really chaotic state, where a person's nervous system is terrified of the very closeness it simultaneously desperately craves. It's just a constant, exhausting internal push and pull. So the crucial point is how this chaos actually manifests clinically in adults. Studies using latent class analysis have identified two distinct and deeply painful adult profiles here. The first is disorganized oscillating. This one is highly effective, mood-dependent, marked by intense anger, and it's strongly associated with borderline personality disorder traits. The second profile is disorganized impoverished. This basically looks like a severely disorganized version of an avoidant. Low affect, emotionally vacant, poor mentalization, and it's linked to schizoid and severe avoidant traits. Both of these represent profound impairments in how a person views themselves and the people around them. Chapter 6, Earning Your Secure Attachment. Okay, if you're feeling a bit heavy right now, take a breath, because here is the good news. Absolutely no one is permanently doomed to repeat these cycles forever. Enter Mary Main's most groundbreaking discovery at UC Berkeley, earned secure attachment. This is the clinical proof that a secure adult nervous system can actually be consciously built, regardless of the painful beginnings you might have been handed. It turns out your attachment style isn't some computer program that just finished compiling at age 2. It's a living, breathing system that can constantly update based on new data. Let's move to and see how this actually builds in the real world. How do you rewrite your nervous system's faulty programming? Well, there are 4 actionable components required. First, you have to develop a coherent narrative, meaning looking at your past honestly without being completely flooded by shame. Second, you need consistent, safe relationships. That could be with a partner, a mentor, or a therapist. Third, you must experience repeated repair after a rupture. Your brain physically needs to learn that conflict doesn't mean the end of the world. And fourth, you have to develop your mentalizing capacity. That's the ability to accurately understand your own emotions and your partner's intentions without instantly reacting to a perceived threat. So, practically speaking, if you are currently caught in the anxious avoidant trap, here is exactly how you start breaking it. First, both partners have to learn the framework and openly name the cycle. Second,
the avoidant partner needs to practice communicating departures, literally just saying, "Hey, I need 30 minutes, but I will absolutely be back." That alone stops the anxious partner's abandonment alarm from ringing. Third, the anxious partner has to practice self-regulating, distracting or self-soothing for that 30 minutes before pursuing. You also want to schedule regular check-ins and alone time to preempt any threats. And finally, look into emotionally focused therapy, or EFT. It specifically targets this exact dynamic and boasts an incredible 70% recovery rate for couples who are willing to put in the work.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Your childhood doesn't have to be your ceiling. Look, the chemistry of chaos is a highly addictive drug, but it is one that you can sober up from. You can choose to stop confusing anxiety with love. You can choose the vulnerability of genuine repair over the familiar, comfortable pain of the trap. The only question is, now that you know exactly how the trap works, are you ready to step out of it and build the secure love you actually deserve?